Welcome to Beyond Distribution with GTDC. In today's episode, we're joined by David Tharp, Senior Vice President of Ecosystems and Alliances at Dataiku. David shares his perspectives on rapid adoption of AI and why collaboration among systems integrators, VARs, vendors, and distributors is key to bringing these groundbreaking technologies to life. We'll explore big questions. What role would distributors play in orchestrating and deploying AI solutions? How essential is collaboration between companies like Dataiku, major integrators such as Accenture and Deloitte, and the broader vendor community? And as AI continues to reshape the market, how can IT and business leaders adapt to maximize its potential? Get ready for insights into these topics and more right here on Beyond Distribution with GTDC. For additional resources, articles, and research on AI and innovation, be sure to visit the GTDC Knowledge Hub.
Welcome, everybody, to our next edition of Beyond Distribution with GTDC. I am thrilled today to have as a guest David Tharp, Senior Vice President for Ecosystems and Alliances for Dataiku. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Frank. It's great to be here. I appreciate you getting my title out there. I know it's a mouthful, so
No,
I lead the partners at Dataiku.
Yeah, no, I got it. As I said, I really appreciate you coming. Let's start kind of like I usually do with these types of discussions, is just talk a little bit about your professional journey, if you will. I noticed in LinkedIn you had degrees in economics and finance. What kind of got you into IT, and how'd you end up doing what you're doing?
Natural fit, right? So yeah, that's right. And actually, as we record this, I'm in my hometown in Ohio, which so I started out with an economics degree at Ohio State, so very proud of that. But yeah, I worked for a few years, and then I went back to grad school. And in grad school, I was intending to, well, I did focus on finance and entrepreneurship. But to answer your question, how did I get here? Really, frankly, it was 9/11. I went into my MBA in 2000. I went to a 2-year full-time program at Notre Dame, and going into our second year, obviously about this time of year, that all happened. And it really, changed my entire path forward, because the markets crashed. MBA placement rates were at that time a historical low. But the good news for me is I had great experience in between. I was operating a distribution center, actually, a $20 million P&L. And so for a 25, 26-year-old to have that kind of responsibility, I was able to land a pretty good job with a consulting firm. That consulting firm was an operational consulting firm, but focused on like IT implementations. And so the short answer is it wasn't what I expected, but that's what I ended up doing. So from IT consulting, started doing ERP implementations. That led to some frankly pretty cool projects. I did a voice to analytics project where I actually worked on the original iPhone launch back in whatever 2006 or 07. Through a series of events, I was doing consulting, and then I noticed that the guys that were selling the software were making a hell of a lot more money than I was, and so I ended up going into to tech sales, and that would have been around probably 2009 or so. Short story from there, I basically ended up in sales leadership roles for 6-7 years, and then kind of fell into a partner leader role at my previous company called Anaplan. Was intending to go into a sales role and ended up in a global partner leader role. Learned a lot through that, and that's sort of how I ended up from IT into the kind of the partner leadership role that I'm in today. So
yeah, it's a good story. I mean, well, first of all, for a guy from the Midwest, Ohio State and Notre Dame, those are two pretty impressive schools.
Well, let me add, and I am a huge college sports fan, football fan in particular. And so along the way, I did go and get my Six Sigma degree, if you remember all of that, in whatever time frame we're talking now, after Jack Welch popularized that. I did get that degree from Michigan. So I have a little certificate degree from Michigan, which I don't like to announce, but so hardcore Midwest, and I live in Chicago now, and yeah, it's all been a great career. But
it's interesting. A lot of the people I talk to that are in the world that we live in, it obviously didn't plan to end up in those type of jobs. It played out kind of the way yours did too. Mine was similar. I was with IBM in the early days in an operational role,
Yep.
And I remember being there late one night working with my team on reconciling the commissions for the sales guys. And I did the exact same thing. I said, why am I sitting there at 8 o'clock at night
Right. Right.
doing this? These guys are making all this money. And that's how I got into sales. It's a similar kind of, story.
Frank, that's really ironic. I skipped a couple of chapters, not to be too detailed there, but for a while I was actually working for a consulting company doing sales commission systems implementations, and seeing these checks that were coming through from tech sales guys. But yeah, that all aside, I went from Anaplan obviously to here now through a great connection. My CRO at Anaplan ended up going into private equity and as an operating partner, and then became a board advisor here at Dataiku. So I'm going into my 5th year, and so when I was looking for my next chapter, reached out to him, and he said I've got the perfect fit. So that's sort of how I ended up going from one partner role to now, which is, I would really consider this even a level up, just given the orchestration of the multiple partners. I know we'll get into this, but the complexity of our ecosystem and the fact that we're right in the middle of this AI market, this is by far the most complex role I've ever been in. And I absolutely love it. And I think it well prepares you for, any kind of a GM or CEO type role, because of the many, many things you have to orchestrate across marketing and sales and implementation and of course all the legal, finance, HR stuff. But wherever I go from here, I don't know, but I certainly plan to be around Dataiku for the next few years as we accelerate this company to the next stage. So
Yeah, and let me tell you, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Dataiku
sure.
because a couple of things. One, there's some magic words that you've said. One is AI. Two,
Yeah.
Partner ecosystem to me is a magic word.
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting, and I spent a little bit of time, and of course you and I have been in some meetings together, and we've
Yep.
had a chance to talk to each other. I mean, Dataiku has been around since 2013, right?
Yeah.
And AI
Yeah.
wasn't cool, and machine learning wasn't as cool back then as it certainly is now.
Yeah.
And so, talk a little bit about that, the company, your thoughts around the partner ecosystem, et cetera, because it's certainly relevant where we are
Yeah.
right now.
It's a fascinating story. I'm so honored and feel very blessed to be a part of this Dataiku story. But yeah, kind of the Cliff's Notes version, founded by four French mathematician, engineer, brilliant, brilliant guys. Two are still very involved as the CEO and the CIO, or pardon me, the CTO, or technology/product officer. Florian is our CEO. He's pretty well known in the market now. But this has been quite an evolution for the company. But I would just say these guys basically built where the market is now going, and what that thing is an orchestration layer, which is really technology agnostic. So Dataiku at its core, we're the outcome we're driving is to make it easier for our customers to put AI and particularly agentic AI models into production, right? We'll talk a lot about that, I'm sure, but like that's one of the biggest challenges in AI is actually moving things from sort of pilot to production. But in essence, what we do is sit across all of the other major technology players, whether it's your infrastructure providers, your cloud data providers. So there we're talking about, of course, the cloud service providers like AWS and Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, obviously a major infrastructure player, Snowflake, Databricks, private cloud providers like HPE. We sit across all of that. And Dataiku is where you orchestrate and build your AI projects. And so whatever your underlying tech stack environment is, or whatever LLM models you want to plug into this, fine by us. We're not, beholden to any one technology, because that's what the customer wants. So and then the last point is, we're really bringing together the multiple user profiles, from a data engineer to a data scientist/model builder to a data user. And that's the vision that Florian, Clement, and others had 13 years ago, that the market is now moving toward. And you see a lot of our partners that we're now, starting to question those, competitive lines. And we get it. We understand where the market's going to go. And frankly, we think that all boats can rise with this tide. But when you see things like a Microsoft Fabric, or some of the product announcements, coming from the Databricks, like, they're validating that what the customer wants is an orchestration layer, because they don't want to have to choose. The customer doesn't want to have to choose, one provider over another. but they need to be able to do all of that in a very secure and governed way. And I think that's sort of the red thread throughout our product that our founders really, like had a vision for. But to your point, nobody was buying that, right? Nobody was buying that 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So it's funny because when I actually made the move to Dataiku, we were very positioned as a machine learning tool competing against other, kind of siloed tools. And what the market wants is this orchestration layer across multiple, AI and data infrastructure vendors. So yeah, we believe we're in a good spot. It's pretty validated. We're in, Gartner Magic Quadrants. Recently, last week came out again in the Forbes Cloud 100 list. So, I think the vision that they had was probably ahead of its time, but it's where the market is now. So hopefully that positions us pretty well.
Yeah, well, I think it does, certainly. And you've also, and you kind of mentioned it, but you've got some really significant alliance partners that you're working with. I mean, you mentioned three or four of them that are,
Yeah.
massive players. Talk a little bit about how those work and
Yeah.
kind of those alliances and how they've been developed and where do you see them going?
Yeah, great question. So again, I am really trying to talk factually and not in a braggadocious way at all, but like we are just really in a cool spot. I think it really started, first of all, we have an on-prem version of Dataiku. We also, of course, have a cloud version. Our cloud version is on AWS. So we started that partnership really through, a product nature. But over the past few years, we just really have recognized, number one, kind of to the point of distribution, where are buyers going to buy? And so we really had to lean in heavily to the marketplace notion, being available, not only being able to be deployed on various cloud environments, but being able to be acquired through or procured through a marketplace. So, we're available on all of those marketplaces. And so, we're moving into actual co-selling motions, particularly with AWS. They were actually the sponsor. Get this, Frank, we had a very cool event in London 2 weeks ago, and AWS was the sponsor of our mid-year go-to-market leaders event, and they sponsored our concert at Wembley Stadium with Coldplay. So
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
we had a really cool event, and everybody stayed off camera, so that was great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but AWS is a great example of a great partnership that started, probably 5, 6 years ago with the product development, and now we've moved toward the co-selling and marketplace motions. Snowflake, we had a very intentional product integration. We are the most tightly integrated AI product to Snowflake, and that's great for our customers to be able to basically click through and deploy Dataiku in their Snowflake environment. It's great for Snowflake because we drive a lot of consumption into their cloud, which is, of course, what they like. And more recently, we are really seeing some emerging partnerships with NVIDIA. I've got a team in New York this week meeting with NVIDIA. We're going to have some announcements, I believe, coming out, but glad to talk about what that is. What we're trying to do is drive very specific AI use cases that customers can deploy from pilot to production very quickly, and this might end up being in a powered by NVIDIA, kind of supercharged. So Snowflake's a good example, a partner that we're building very specific, like industry focused use cases that customers can kind of plug in or make that easy from a product integration, that if they're a Snowflake customer, they can integrate, Dataiku very quickly. We also do that with Databricks. We recently moved into a partnership with HPE in their, AI ecosystem. So all of this to say, no customer necessarily wants to use Dataiku in a vacuum, right? Or in a silo, right? We're only as good as sort of the ecosystem that we integrate into. And so I think when we recognize that with this explosion of AI in the past couple of years, like we did have to shift our partner strategy pretty quickly. And I think that's where we've really made some, significant moves to remain a very, robust part of today's kind of modern AI tech stack.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and of course, we haven't even mentioned all the LLMs, right? But just again, by nature of our product, we want to stay relevant by being agnostic so that customer can bring in whatever LLM they want to use, but we're providing the orchestration of all of those technologies sort of in one front end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you think about it, um, those are all very significant companies that are making big bets, right?
Yep.
And the fact that they're making big bets with Dataiku is a big deal. right, for you guys. The fact
Yeah.
that, I mean, you've got all the names that folks in your space want to have.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. So when you say it back to me like that, sometimes yeah, no, and in all earnest, like listen, for me in my role, it's a dream role, right? It
Yeah.
really is. I mean, we're sitting in the middle of this, and we haven't even talked about the major GSIs who are the market makers of actually driving adoption of this technology. Because, at the end of the day, we're the vendor. We have to be easy to use, but somebody has to be there to get the customer up and running and drive the adoption and ROI of this, and that's our partnerships with like Accenture, Deloitte, Capgem, and all of the other major SIs. So
Yeah, and that was going to be frankly, going to be my next question. You
okay,
kind of just rolled right into it. So, you know, not unlike cloud 10 or 15 years
yeah,
ago, there's been a period of, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and I think a lot of people are looking at where are the opportunities, and what are they, particularly within the channel, to really drive meaningful, revenue, meaningful profits, et cetera. What's your view of, sort of what opportunities does AI and what you guys do bring to the channel and the channel partners that you're working with?
yeah, significant. So what do we mean by that? I mean, if you kind of start with some of the stats, like the biggest challenge, I think I alluded to this maybe a couple of times already, but the biggest challenge, or kind of, I wouldn't even say it's a challenge, it's sort of where we are in the evolution of AI adoption. And that's, depending on what survey and what stat you look at, but I think it was reading recently, like BCG came out, like less than 24 companies have actually moved any type of model from AI model from pilot to production. And we're probably talking, Frank, a pretty small scale AI implementation at that. So certainly we don't see too many companies yet that are at a large scale, broad adoption of AI across the enterprise. That's obviously our vision. We want to make it easier for companies to do that. But I say that in that not only is this one of the fastest growing software markets that probably you and I have ever seen, but it's still like very much in its infancy because of the nature of, it's only in the past couple of years that we've really moved to a broader set of tools available. So companies are starting to now adopt and use those tools, but they aren't yet moving from pilot to production in a mass scale. So that's what we're trying to help make that much easier. But if you think about what does that mean for the whole channel, yeah, I mean the GSIs, since we were just talking about them, yeah, you see the NVIDIA's growing obviously to the #1 market cap company in the world because they're sort of, the underpinning infrastructure to help drive this. You see companies like Databricks obviously exploding, Snowflake, all of them. We're of course a much smaller scale, but growing very rapidly and as well. But if you think about the other players, I mean, one of the reasons I moved into this role was because in my previous role, I saw the opportunity for SIs, and not to get too ethereal about this, but like I love building an opportunity economy, or not economy of opportunity, right? Um, and I saw that here because on the front end of this is just like choosing the right tooling, but now it's about moving it from pilot to production and across the organization. We have only touched like a small fraction of the percent of users. It's not just about the data scientists anymore. It's about the data users. And when I went back earlier and talked about sort of orchestration of profiles from data engineer to data scientist to data user, it's really that from the data engineer and the data scientist to the data user, that's the next explosion of growth. Who's going to drive that? Not the vendor. The vendor has to be easy enough to use. Like
Right.
our platform allows you to click or code. So whichever skill set you want to bring to the table, fine. But like, no technology necessarily drives its own adoption. I know there's a lot of debate around like product-led growth and versus sales teams and all that, but like we are a product that needs an ecosystem. And so the the SI opportunity in general to drive not only initial implementation, which needs to be fast time to value, but then getting your first case stood up and moved into production, and then identifying your next 20 use cases that drive ROI. We haven't even started that. We really
Yeah.
haven't. So like
Yeah.
the massive opportunity for SIs across the entire channel is just starting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I tell you an interesting anecdote. I was in a meeting about a year and a half ago, and Arvind, the CEO of IBM, was
Yep.
presenting, and he got up and he was talking about AI and AI adoption, and he said, and he used a baseball analogy, which I was surprised to that he did. He said,
Cricket. Yeah.
we're in the second inning. He said, if that, in terms
Yeah.
of adoption.
Yep.
And I thought that now, and I happen to follow him as the speaker, which was kind of interesting too. And I got up and I said that, Arvin, I think that's really interesting that, we're in the second inning. Unfortunately, I'm in the eighth inning. So I'm not going to have much time left to experience this.
Right.
So
Maybe go extra innings. Who knows?
yeah, exactly. Either we're going to go extra innings or I hope it happens faster.
Yeah.
But it feels like it is starting to happen faster to me anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think look, it's interesting. You hit a point in your career, and I mean, there's great books on this, but from strength to strength is one that I read often because I'm at the age now where it's like, I want to stay relevant. I want to stay in the game because it's so exciting, because it's so fun, and I've got hopefully a few more innings ahead of me. But the point is like, this game is moving so fast. It reminds me, I'm certainly never been an elite athlete, but like when they talk about moving from, college to pro, how fast the game is.
Yeah.
Like, so I think, the good news for anybody in this ecosystem is I think there's going to be a world of opportunity, whether you're a vendor, but I'm thinking more so now about like, some of the SI partners, the VARs, the distributors, like the role that they can play. The other side of that coin is you have got to retool and move so much faster than I ever have at any other point in my career. So, when you have to move that fast, when you do get into your own personal eighth or ninth inning, like it's fun, but like keeping pace with the change has been, on one hand, the most exciting part of this role for me. And on the other hand, like it's what I have to do on nights and weekends now is go figure out, like I'm putting myself through a course on just how to use various AI tools because I've got Dataiku and we use that internally, of course, but I've got to stay relevant by using the technology that's right in front of us. But this game is moving so fast, Frank, like, and kind of back to the point, it's not even about 13 years ago with Dataiku. We were positioned differently 12 months ago.
Yeah.
We were positioned differently 12 months prior to that. So even in the, I'm in my fifth year here, we've had to evolve our position in this market at least 3 times since I've been here.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're right. I mean, in terms of this is an incredible time in the industry, and I've been in it for a long period of time. And I'll tell anybody that listens, I've been through all the ups and downs and the transitions that we've seen. This combination of, technology and change that we're seeing is more profound than anything I've seen. And it's exciting at one point, from one standpoint, and it's a little scary from another in terms of where is it going and how do you to your point, how do you keep up, right? I mean, nights, weekends, talking to people. How do you keep up? And that's one of the reasons why I like to talk to people like you, who gives us a perspective because you're in it. I mean, you're in it every day.
We're in it. And, just as I talk with, my direct report leaders across the world, like you've got to stay relevant through, whatever your form of learning is, but there's so many great podcast books, all of it, but just using the tools has been sort of the biggest learning curve for me. And then, frankly, I think it just makes me more relevant if I'm using AI tools in my everyday life. But back to an interesting point I wanted to mention in terms of like, just sort of the opportunity. And again, we're kind of talking about the SIs now. If you think across the C-suite, nobody's exempt from this, right? This isn't a CIO thing or a CEO thing. The CEO is being asked by the board, what's your AI strategy? And so he or she has to implement an AI strategy. The CFO, well, let's say the CIO is worried about, more tools, more people in those tools, more governance, more security risk. CFOs, caring about an explosion of cost as we have to adopt all these technologies. And even a chief people officer is thinking about how do I upskill my talent to be able to use these tools, or how do I provide the tools as a company? Because as you and I move on to the next stages of our career or life, like good luck hiring any younger talent today if you don't have a tool set that they expect to be able to use because they're using AI in their everyday lives now. it would be like you and I joining a job in 2005 that doesn't use the internet. Like you wouldn't have done it. And
Yeah.
so companies are under such pressure, not just from like a CEO strategy or a governance or a cost, like from a people component of staying relevant and using today's modern technology to get jobs done. So
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation, because you're right. As you go through all of that, everybody is impacted in a
everybody's,
very significant way, a very significant way.
yeah,
You mentioned something, David, and kind of wrapping up, what I wanted to do was, you talked about support services. So
yeah,
obviously, the world that I live in, and what GTDC does in terms of, sort of advocating for the distributors and what the role that distribution plays. So what's your view on the types of support services that you would look for from the distributors, and certainly the partners, but the partners and the distributors?
yeah, for sure. It's incredibly funny how timely this question is, because I just approved an invoice this morning to the distributor that we have moved forward with for right now in terms of like a pilot. So we're new at distribution at Dataiku. We're just starting to we realized, I think at the beginning, probably end of year as we went into strategy, go to market planning, that we needed to start a distribution strategy. And you're seeing other companies like, us, Snowflake, some of these AI kind of cloud AI vendors really starting to move, beyond just a direct selling organization. So yeah, my point is I just had to approve an invoice today for exactly these types of services. But I'll get specific in a moment. But I think, we really see it as an extension of our platform as an orchestration platform, and I need a distributor who can help orchestrate that ecosystem. If we talk about the ecosystem that I'm trying to manage myself, we're talking cloud vendors, we're talking, you know, 50 plus ISVs, independent, software vendors. We're talking some of the bigger cloud data providers like Snowflake, Databricks, the GSIs. I need an extension of my role that's orchestrating all of that.
Yeah.
When I think about a simplified partner strategy for us on an XY axis, it's accelerating our sales and delivery capability to serve our customers who want to buy and want to implement. And generally, that's going to be, oftentimes your consulting partners kind of going up that horizontal for you in terms of providing that capacity in the bodies. If I think about the x-axis now, I'm thinking about strategic market positioning, which we sort of talked a lot about with my tech partners. I want to make sure we're staying relevant. But if you really think about the top right of that, where you're accelerating sales and distribution and delivery capacity, and you're accelerating or kind of positioning strategically, which includes being where the buyers want to be. We're talking marketplaces, and we're obviously talking distributors, because they can accelerate my channel. They can put me right in the middle of where the buyers are going to be, and they can orchestrate offerings that I want to take to market of Dataiku plus Snowflake, or Dataiku plus, HPE, or Dataiku plus NVIDIA. And so I see the role of the distributor not as like just moving boxes for me. It's being an extension of me to really orchestrate the ecosystem, and then, provide access into, connection. I mean, for sure, because they're much bigger companies than I am. They're much more established. They have the relevance in the C-suite that we're trying to aspire to get to. But it's really, there's not a better example of what I need in that high right combination of acceleration of sales and delivery capacity, as well as strategic market positioning.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, and I know you've spent the time researching and thinking about it, because I've been in meetings with you where we've had lots of discussions
Sure
about
have.
this, right? But it is interesting to hear that, because here's the thing that I'm happy about, right?
Yeah.
Based on what you said, there's a perspective in the marketplace at times that the legacy distributors have been and will continue to be excellent box movers, right?
Yep.
They do that better than anybody. They've been doing it for
Yep.
40 years better than anybody. But as the industry's evolved, what now is the future? What's it look like in terms of the compelling value and the orchestration piece, which we've been talking about for a couple of years, and Vation and
Yep.
I have been talking about it, Dave, and you
Yep.
and I have been together in meetings. that is critical. And people, I think, underestimate how important that is in terms of the marketplace and the ecosystem we operate in, and making that connection and being able to orchestrate all of that. And it's interesting to hear you say that that's probably the most significant piece, right? Because that'll drive the acceleration.
That's exactly right. I mean, and I think we'll all learn this together, but I think my ask of the distributors is to keep pace with that need, because we are moving, again, not to overemphasize it, but we're moving at such a clip, such a speed of game here. And I think the distributors, as long as they can keep pace with the expectation that I will have of them as I write the checks to them, is that they can do that orchestration and they can kind of fit on both of those axes for me. And, I don't mean this to come out the wrong way. It's certainly not meant to be threat, or harmful, but it's like, if they can't, then that's not the right option for me, because that's what I need. And it's either I have to invest in my team and build a bigger team to do that, or we have to invest in a bigger direct sales force that can do that. But I'm really, hopeful that, as we all evolve toward a more complex environment, that's the need that I have for a distributor. So I do think that the word, and I've heard this multiple times, I think on some of your podcasts too, I think the word distribution is a little misleading, but it's just what we call it. It's really orchestration. That's what I'm looking for.
No question. And the good piece, the good news is they all recognize that.
Yes,
and
they do.
And the investments that are being made are absolutely in doing exactly what you're referring to, because that's the requirement. And the one thing that they've been able to do over the years, which really has amazed me, because I worked with them for years as a vendor executive, is continue to evolve to ensure that they meet the needs of both their customers, the VARs and the solution providers and the SIs, but also their vendors, who are really more partners than, in my mind, customers, right?
Yeah, I'm really glad you said it that way, because I know, as I just was saying that response, I was thinking that's very kind of secular to me. But again, my partner strategy here is aligned to what we know the customers want, because that's what they tell us. And so what the customer actually needs is that orchestrator. So like, it's not just about me, what the vendor wants. We're trying to fulfill the needs of the customer. And again, it's just particularly in an AI product, like no customer really wants to be using that in a silo. And frankly, from a vendor's perspective, if you're just going in without the ecosystem attachment, you're just going to be, the next software product that's rationalized by the CIO, right?
Yeah,
we know that you're going to, your 3-year contract is it's not going to renew. It's probably going to attrit. But you're going to be first on the chopping block if you're a standalone product. And so from a vendor's perspective, who aspires to have longevity in this market, that we have to find ways to attach ourselves into the mission critical infrastructures.
Yeah. Well, look, I think, David, this was great. I think you've basically said it, all in terms of, how an emerging, company that's got, tremendous technology in an area that that clearly is the most significant, that we've seen in a long time.
Yep.
It is an exciting role that you're in, and I really appreciate you being on, and look forward to continue to working with you and seeing you at the various events, and doing what we can to help you, drive what you're trying to get done.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, my friend. It's great to see you and spend time with you. I'm sure we'll see each other soon. I think it was Oceanside earlier this year and somewhere else, but I like that we find the warm weather spots, man. So
yeah. Well, we'll be back next year at Oceanside, so get ready.
I love it. It's great to see you. I really appreciate the time.
All right, thanks, David.
All right, thanks.